Welcome to the Research Like a Pro question and answer series. And today we're talking about, can AI help determine the copyright status of an image? So we had two really great questions in our lesson last week. So I thought this would be a good topic to go over. Um, the first part of the question is like a specific example of how, like, what would be allowed for a specific website. So on a gazetteer site for Germany, meyersgaz.org, I've taken screenshots of the map on the site. A village my second great grandparent came from is just citing the website and page where I found it okay in my research report. And then another part of this question that we'll discuss is, has anyone tried asking AI about copyright for items or working through this process? And so we're going to do these two combined. Can AI help us with the first question about Myers-Gaz? So first, let's understand Myers-Gaz. This is the Myers-Gazetteer. And as a person who's not a German researcher, I tried to just learn about this from what I could from their website. So here's the main page, meyersgaz.org, and it's in German. So Google Chrome has translated this page into English, and it gives some ideas for how to search. But basically, you can search for place names within Germany, and a lot of the historical place names are difficult to find on modern maps. So this really helps find historical place names and then put them on the map in a present day Google map so you can kind of compare and see where things are. So going up to the about, so if you see up at the top here, there's a little button to click about, and sometimes it's unclear what you need to click on to find the answer to the copyright question, but clicking that brought us to some copyright information. So meyersgaz.org/about. Historical map images are from David Rumsey Map Collection and are distributed under this Creative Commons license, which is linked. So clicking that link tells more about what that means. And then it talks about how they were scaled and distorted to match Google Maps. And then some latitude longitude data was obtained from GeoNames, and it is distributed under this same Creative Commons license. So clicking on Creative Commons can tell us more about what that means as far as usage. And then basically Creative Commons gives you permission to use it under certain conditions. So clicking on that, it brings us to this website for the kind of the definition of what Creative Commons license is and what you can do. So it says attribution, non-commercial, share alike 3.0 unported. And I don't know what unported means, but it does explain that you are free to share, copy, and redistribute the material in any medium or format, and you can adapt, remix, transform, and build upon the material under the following terms: attribution. And then if you scroll down, it says non-commercial use. So it's um, if you are using it for like a research report that you're sharing with friends for free. But if you're trying to sell a book with a whole bunch of pictures from this website, then that wouldn't be allowed. So they don't want you making money off of this website and the screenshots or whatever the maps, but you're allowed to share it for free, basically, for non-commercial uses. So for example, if I go to this entry in the Miles Gazetteer, um, then clicking on map here takes me to this historical map image, and I can see the exact location of that, and like zooming in and out helps me see where it is on Google Maps. So this is a great website. So let's say I took this screenshot and wanted to put it in my research report. So it would be allowed under the Creative Commons, and it asks for you to give attribution and not sell it, basically. So now that we know the answer to the question, let's see how AI does with answering the question. So let's say we didn't do that on our own, that we are going to use AI to check the copyright. So I went to ChatGPT, and the first thing I thought of was, what if there's a copyright custom GPT that we can use? So if you go down here to explore GPTs, then you can see if you can find one that is applicable. So clicking that brings us to this page. And if I put in copyright, there's a bunch of options. And the one I chose was copyright checker, but there's other ones too. They have ratings, so you can decide if this is a good rating or not. And it tells you the capabilities and some ideas for conversation starters. And it people have had 10,000 plus conversations with it. It tells you a brief description and who created it. So this is kind of like a name that it could be anyone's. It's not like a reputable name or anything. So it might be good, it might be bad. So here, when I start a conversation, I can turn thinking on or off. I chose to keep it on to help have a better answer. And I pasted the image and just said, this map on myersgaz.org, knowing that its instructions are supposed to tell you if it's under copyright or not. So it thought for a couple seconds and said likely public domain for the underlying historical map, but the website presentation may have separate terms. And the map shown appears to be historical German map from Myers-Gaz, likely old enough that the original map copyright has expired. But the screenshot includes myersgaz.org website, marker buttons, and layout, which may be protected as website content or subject to the site's usage terms. So for the safest use the historical map image only and credit Myers-Gaz as the source and check the site's terms before commercial or large-scale reuse. So that's good advice because it tells you to check with Myers-Gaz. But I kind of wanted the AI to do that for me. So I wasn't too excited about this copyright checker custom GPT. I didn't feel like it was very thorough. There's no links to any sources or anything. So then I went to the help page, which wasn't the right page. I should have gone to the about page. But the help page did say some information about that the underlying map was, it had a citation to what the underlying map was. And so it cites that and tells us when it was, the time period that it was from, and guesses that the work was old enough for copyright to have expired. But again, it's not very specific here. And then I asked, well, if the map was created in Germany, we need to research whether Germany has a rule about public domain. So then it did think about that, and gave the answer that Germany's copyright term is 70 years after the death of the author, and the term is generally 70 years after publication for anonymous works, and government works may be free from copyright, but maps are not automatically exempt just because a government office made them. So again, general advice, but it gives us this idea of maybe 70 years. So the practical answer is the underlying historical map is very likely in the public domain, and the website might be protected as far as like if you take a screenshot of the whole page of the website. So then I was kind of annoyed with the fact that I never had gotten any sources that I could look at. So I just said, give me a link to the website, a website about Germany's copyright terms. And so then it did a good job and gave me this link to Act on Copyright and Related Rights, Section 64. I clicked on that. It gave me a quote from that page. It also gave me Section 66 to look at. And this is what happens when you click on the link. And then I said, open the link, and I can tell it's going to be in German. And then Chrome translated it again, and it just says copyright expires 70 years after the author's death, and 66 talks about copyright in anonymous and pseudonymous works expires 70 years after the publication. It expires 70 years after the creation of the work if the work was published within this period, was not published within this period. So that was great information. So I decided to try again because I felt like that took a while to get the answer from the custom GPT, and I wasn't super excited about it. So I thought, what if I just do a new chat with the latest model, the thinking model on, and tell it in the first place to research online for information about copyright for maps from Myers Gazetteer, and give the website. So then it thought for 18 seconds. So it took a little more time to think, do some research, and then get the answer. And here I like this answer better because it has inline citations to websites where it shows the answer. So I feel like adding this prompt to research online is probably what made the difference. And so that was better. And where it's something like this where I really wanted to check and make sure that it's correct information, I want those sources right there. So here it came up with the original information that we had found by clicking on the About page. And it says that the historical map images come from David Rumsey. These are distributed under Creative Commons. And then it mentions the Google Maps thing. So for most genealogy teaching, blog, or report uses, it would likely be okay without special permission in a report or a blog post. And if you're doing anything commercial like a book or paid course materials, then you might need to be more careful and ask permission, such as a paid webinar handout, paid course materials, marketing material, or anything sold as a product. So if I had a whole product about Myers-Gaz and I have a bunch of screenshots from it, then that might not be considered non-commercial. And so going down a little further, it does mention that David Rumsey's own permissions are broader and that they are allowed for commercial use. And so there's a little difference here. So just looking in that, you could potentially go to the David Rumsey map and use it that one if you were doing something that you wanted to. for publication, even if it's for profit or nonprofit. And then the last thing here is the public domain angle, about how the maps, the underlying maps that were used are very old, and the fact that this is expired because the author is likely deceased. Or if it's anonymous, then it's been 70 years since its publication. And then watch out for Google Maps content. If you're using the Google Maps part, then you might need to check Google Maps copyright and permissions. And I think they have a similar license, but I can't remember. So we'd have to look that up. So here's a suggested attribution, which I thought was also really helpful for a Myers-Gaz historical map screenshot. It gives kind of a way that you can put a caption underneath, and this could be your attribution, and then you could put uh, an evidence explained style citation as a footnote at the end of this, maybe. All right. So, what I learned from this, my personal takeaways, asking AI to research online about copyright for a particular publication using ChatGPT 5.5 thinking produced the most helpful results from just one prompt. It gave sources. I thought it did better than just putting a screenshot into the custom GPT, although maybe in that custom GPT, I could have given the same prompt and gotten the same good results. So I think the key here was asking it to research online. Public domain, um, a lot of older things like that are in public domain, but sometimes the website presentation may have reused terms. The Creative Commons license is good for non-commercial things like a research report that you're not trying to sell like 100 copies of it. Use context matters. A free family history report is usually lower risk than a paid book, course, or commercial product. And some people ask the question, what about a client report? I feel like where you're not trying to sell like 100 copies of the client report, you're just giving it to your one client. I think that might be different, but a judge could decide if it ever goes to court, but usually this type of thing would not ever make it to court. So I'm not too worried about the client report usage. Best practice, use clear attribution if using Google Maps layers to check their permissions, and for paid products, consider using the David Rumsey map directly or just asking permission. And I think we always forget the fact that we can just ask permission. And so if we are unsure about using it for like a course or a client report where it is kind of a product, but not the typical type of book where you'd be selling hundreds of copies, then just ask permission if you're feeling worried. And often we get permission and it's not a big deal. Hopefully that helped answer the two questions about using Myers-Gaz in a report and if AI can help us figure out copyright. I think AI can help us figure out copyright, especially when we use a good prompt like asking it to research online to help us figure out the answer. All right. Thank you for listening. Good luck.